I'm 62 years old, and I still wake up reaching for her. Even after all these years, my first conscious thought is always the same. She's here. Margaret lies beside me, her silver hair catching the morning light that slips through our bedroom curtains, and I fall in love all over again. They say passion fades, that comfortable companionship is what remains when youth burns away. They're wrong. What we have now is richer, deeper, more profound than anything we knew at 30. This is our story, not the sanitized version we tell at dinner parties, but the real one. The one with doubts and fears, with fights and reconciliations, with a love so fierce it refused to let either of us go. I met Margaret in 1985 at a bookstore in Greenwich Village. I was 32, freshly divorced from a marriage that had felt like wearing someone else's skin. And she was 29, teaching literature at NYU. I remember everything about that afternoon, the musty smell of old paperbacks, the jazz playing softly overhead, the way she held a copy of Adrienne Rich's poems like it was something precious. Our eyes met over the poetry section. That's how it always happens in stories, isn't it? But what they don't tell you is the terror that comes after. The paralyzing fear when you realize you're looking at someone who could change everything. I should have walked away. I had a career at a conservative law firm, parents who barely spoke to me after the divorce, a carefully constructed life that didn't have room for more scandal. But she smiled, God, that smile, and asked if I'd read Rich before. No, I lied. I'd practically memorized 21 love poems, had cried over those verses in the privacy of my apartment, had seen my own secret self reflected in every line. You should, she said, and her fingers brushed mine as she handed me the book. That touch lasted maybe 2 seconds. It rewrote my entire future. We talked for 3 hours in that bookstore. When it closed, we moved to a cafe. When the cafe closed, we walked the streets until sunrise. 2 women discovering they'd been speaking the same language all along, just in different silences. I didn't kiss her that night. I was too afraid. But she called me the next day, and the day after that, and slowly, carefully, we built something neither of us had dared to hope for. Those early months were intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. We couldn't hold hands in public. We introduced each other as roommates to people we didn't trust. My mother hung up when I tried to tell her about Margaret. My father sent a letter telling me not to contact them again, but Margaret's apartment became my sanctuary. We'd cook dinner together, her teaching me to make her grandmother's recipes while I taught her the legal jargon I used to keep my 2 worlds separate. We'd fall asleep on her worn couch, her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. People think the hard part is coming out. It isn't. The hard part is staying together when the world keeps pushing you apart. In 1993. 8 years into our relationship, I made partner at my firm. The same week, Margaret's mother died. These 2 events shouldn't be connected, but they are. They'll always be connected in my memory because they showed me who I really was. The funeral was in Ohio, in a small town where Margaret grew up. Her family knew about us by then, in that way where everyone understands, but nobody speaks it aloud. At the wake, I stood apart from her, just another mourner in black. I watched her grieve surrounded by relatives who could embrace her, could stand beside her openly, could claim their right to comfort her. I was the partner who had to hide in plain sight. That night, in the hotel room we'd carefully booked as a double to avoid suspicion, Margaret broke down. Not about her mother, she'd been strong through all of that. She broke down about us. I can't do this anymore, she said, and my heart stopped. I can't keep pretending you're just my friend. You're my person. You're the love of my life. And I had to act like you were nobody. I held her while she sobbed, and I made a choice. The next morning, At the post-funeral brunch, I stood beside her. I held her hand. When her aunt asked who I was, I said, "I'm Margaret's partner. We've been together 8 years." The room went silent. Some people left. Others stared. But Margaret's younger sister crossed the room and hugged us both. "About time," she whispered. "Mom knew. She told me to take care of both of you." I'd love to say everything got easier after that. It didn't. I lost some clients. My parents still refused to acknowledge Margaret's existence. We dealt with a landlord who tried to evict us, a hospital that wouldn't let me see her when she had emergency surgery, 1,000 small indignities that straight couples never face, but we also found our people. We built chosen family from friends who loved us exactly as we were. We marched in pride parades. We donated to LGBTQ causes. We became the kind of visible that had once terrified me. And through it all, we had each other. They don't write enough about the middle years, the long stretch between passionate beginning and poignant ending. Those years get dismissed as routine, as boring domesticity. But those years are where real love lives. Our 40s and 50s weren't marked by grand gestures. They were marked by Margaret bringing me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, exactly how I like it. By me learning to garden because she loved fresh tomatoes. By fights over whose turn it was to clean the bathroom and make up sex that left us laughing. By the way she'd absently reach for my hand while reading. By how I'd wake at 3 a.m. and watch her sleep, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of her presence. We got a dog, a rescue mutt named Sappho, who had Margaret's gentle eyes. We bought a small house in Brooklyn with a yard barely big enough for tomatoes and dreams. We hosted dinner parties where our friends grew older alongside us, where we celebrated weddings and mourned losses, where the wine flowed and the laughter echoed and nobody had to hide. Margaret retired from teaching at 58. I'd expected her to struggle with it, but she bloomed. She started volunteering at an LGBTQ youth center, mentoring kids who reminded me of who we'd been: scared, hopeful, desperate to believe life could be beautiful. "I wish I could tell my 29-year-old self about this," she said one evening, after a particularly good day at the center. "I was so afraid back then. Afraid I'd end up alone. Afraid loving a woman meant choosing a smaller life." "What would you tell her?" I asked. "That loving you made everything bigger, brighter, more real." She took my hand. "That I'd choose this life and you again and again and again." I'm not ashamed to say I cried. At 60, I'd learned that tears weren't weakness, they were proof of a heart that still felt everything deeply. We traveled during those years. Not elaborate trips, we couldn't afford that, but meaningful ones. We went to Provincetown and saw gray-haired lesbian couples who'd been together even longer than us. We visited the Stonewall Inn and stood where history was made. We returned to that Greenwich Village bookstore where we'd met, now owned by someone new, but still smelling of old paper and possibility. "Still the best day of my life," Margaret whispered, standing in the poetry section. "Mine too," I said, and I meant it. Last year, Margaret had a health scare, a lump in her breast that turned out to be benign, but for 3 weeks while we waited for test results, I couldn't breathe properly. I'd catch myself staring at her across the breakfast table, memorizing her face, terrified of a future without her in it. "Stop looking at me like I'm already gone," she said finally. "I'm right here." "I know," I whispered. "That's exactly why I'm looking." It made me realize how we'd been taking forever for granted. We're in our 60s now, not old exactly, but no longer young. Our bodies ache in new ways. We both wear reading glasses. Our hair is silver, our skin mapped with time's geography. We're not the women who met in that bookstore anymore, but we're better. God help me, we're so much better. These days, our love is quieter, but no less intense. It's in how Margaret knows I need silence when I'm stressed, and how I know she needs to talk everything through. It's in the way we've learned each other's rhythms so completely that we move through our home. Like dancers who've rehearsed the same routine for decades, we're planning our future differently now. Making sure our legal documents are in order, a bitter necessity we learned from two. Many friends who lost everything when a partner died because the law didn't recognize their decades together. We're lucky. We married in 2013, the year after New York legalized it. I wore a blue dress. Margaret wore white. We were 57 and 54, respectively, and we cried through our vows. Do you ever regret it? She asked me recently. The kids we didn't have. The conventional life you gave up. I thought about it honestly. About the children we discussed in our 30s but never pursued. About the promotions I didn't get because I refused to hide who I loved. About the family gatherings I wasn't invited to. The relationships that ended because people couldn't accept us. Never, I said. Not even once. And I meant it. Because what we have is worth everything I lost and everything I never had. This love, this partnership, this life we've built together, it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. I'm 62 years old, and I still wake up reaching for her. That's where this story began, and that's where it lies, in the reaching, in the finding, in the staying. Margaret and I don't know how many years we have left together. Maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe just a handful. But we know this. We're still here, and we're still hers, still each other's. Still choosing this love, still grateful for every ordinary, extraordinary day. If you're reading this and you're afraid to love who you love, afraid to live authentically, afraid you've missed your chance, please know this. It's never too late. Your love story is waiting. Your person might be in a bookstore or a coffee shop or somewhere you haven't looked yet. They might be right in front of you. Don't let fear write your ending. Choose love. Choose visibility. Choose the messy, complicated, beautiful truth of who you are. It's worth it. I promise you, it's worth everything. Share your story. Your love matters. You matter.